Welcome to Sacred Use Inspire, Innovate, and Ignite Conversations That Count. I'm Jennifer Regular, and I am so honored and thrilled to be facilitating tonight's discussion on living life on your terms. Have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life? Did you ever find yourself doing something simply because it was expected of you, or because you thought it would make someone happy? Or fear that if you didn't, that you might let them down, disappoint them? You are certainly not alone. Each one of our panelists have the same or have had similar experiences. And today they're going to share how they took back their power to choose what was in their best interests so that they can live with more inner confidence and live more authentically. And so that you can also start building on your dream life, who you want to be living with and around, the kind of work that you want to do and how you want to be able to do it, and where you want to live. So let's meet them now. We have Jessica Satori, Linda Binns, Lily Bhattacharya, and
Bhattacharya.
Pamela Dale. Bhattacharya?
You did
Is
it.
that right?
Yeah, Bhattacharya.
Bhattacharya, okay. And Pamela Dale. All very, very accomplished women on the spiritual path and are about to share their experiences and insights with you, including me. I'm Jennifer Regular, the Soul Illuminator at Lighting the Path, where I get to help innovative light leaders, leading them on their path and purpose, and really from their place of the deeper passion. Because the way I see passion, when you break up the word, it's pass I on. That I is your soul's expression of what you're here to pass on in this lifetime. And I can't wait to hear from each of these ladies and how they're passing on what they stand for, what they've lived, and what they want to share with you tonight. So let's meet them. Linda, why don't you start us off? Share a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. I have been an energy coach for over 26 years now. I specialize in working with professional women who are highly sensitive, highly empathic, and I help them overcome some of the unique challenges that they experience, especially in the working world. And really helping them. They know they're meant for more. They know they deserve more, and they don't know how to accomplish that. They've been forcing themselves to fit in with other people's expectations most of their life. So I help them move through that and learn how to thrive. Thank you.
Thank goodness. We need you supporting that kind of work. Jessica, what about you?
Hi, I'm Jessica Satori. I live in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington State in the US. And I have a business called A Creative Force. Creativity is my thing. So is synchronicity. This year I'll be republishing. It's the 25th anniversary of my book called Synchronicity, The Entrepreneur's Edge. So that makes me a creativity coach and author. I'm also a college professor and a film producer. So as we talk about our own lives and how we make our own lives and create our own lives, I'll talk more about those areas and why I decided to create my life this way. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. This is just getting better and better. Lily, share a little bit about yourself.
So I was based in New York. Now I'm in San Diego, where I've been for the past 26 years. I was a licensed clinical psychologist. I did have a child that I was trying to protect, who was being sexually abused. Her father was a military high-up guy who found out that I had an intuitive business and went after me and went after my license. I then surrendered my license. Luckily, I had been doing readings for 26 years aside from that. So when the door closed on psychology, I then opened up to the spiritual community. By spiritual, I mean mediumship, spiritualists, other people outside my actual church, and really started to serve them with life coaching and just kind of mentoring for indigos, because I felt a lot of them had disadvantaged backgrounds. And I had two excellent parents who were both professionals, really ethical, really hardworking, and everything they said they did. So it was very easy to follow them. And so that's where I am now. Now I'm in the process of doing that through my social media, through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that. But then I do have actual clients that just keep coming to me and have been with me since as long as 14 years at this point.
Wow,
So,
amazing.
and I did write a book. The book is lost. The book will not be published. It was a book about my psychotherapy clients and their experiences with spirituality, but it was on a Dell computer that got lost. And I need the consents in order to actually publish that. And I do not have the consents. I've moved too many times and it's gotten lost. So I will write something else more like fiction, but more like spirituality intertwined in it. So I'm working on that.
I'm excited to hear about that.
Thank you.
Pamela, tell us about you.
Thank you. What a great panel of women. I am an advocate for financial empowerment for women, and there's no better place for us to do that than with a business. And when we start as coaches, we usually start with about 16 pieces of software that are ineffective and try to grow through those. And I am an advocate for the tech, or what we commonly refer to as automations, and helping streamline business for coaches. So coaches can get out and do what it is that they are really here to do, instead of fussing around with misinformation, misaligned information and strategies. So
Amazing, amazing. You are all phenomenal women. And I'm super excited to know about who's listening and who's watching this right now. So we'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. Let us know where you're joining in from. So let's get started with our discussion for tonight about living life on your terms. Probably didn't all start out that way. Probably we're a little bit conditioned or living someone else's dreams for our life and expectations, and maybe following in someone else's footsteps before we got to know our own voice and our own way of our own path and our own destiny, rather than succumbing to the fate of what was beyond our consciousness at the time, before we became more self-aware and confident in what we were really here for, to find that meaning and purpose in our lives. So I'm curious, from the panelists, where in your life were you living someone else's expectations? Did you ever feel that you were? Jessica?
I did. Oh, I'm sorry. You're calling on
Lily
people.
did. Yeah, go ahead, Lily. We'll come back to you,
When I
Jessica.
was in high school was the last time I think I was living someone else's expectations. There was some very set things, like you have to get good grades, you have to marry at a certain age, you have to have children. And I basically was like, nah, I didn't want to. Well, for first thing, I didn't want to get married in my 20s because I could see how much I was changing, and I knew that I probably would stop at some point, like more like 30, 35. So that was issue number one. So I had a lot of cultural issues to deal with because I was raised in an Indian conservative family. And I told my mother and my father that I would be doing things differently and not to get too upset. It took a while for them to realize I was being very serious about that. And then I did do things differently. I'm the last to get married and I'm 52. I mean, this is ridiculous. So everyone else is married with kids and I've done my career more. So I think back then I was living someone else's expectations, and then I was in college, I was like, that's it. It's all over. In a short summary form.
To control of your own life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I
And
was gonna
let people
forget that.
know that that was what was going to be happening.
Oh yeah, no, and they didn't really. At one point, I said, "Do you want me to leave if you can't agree with these things, and you're going to force me?" And they said, "Don't leave. We'd rather have you with us." So I was very lucky. I know a lot of people do not have that support, and they are forced out of families and financial support and emotional support, and it's horrible. I've heard of those stories, and it's so consider myself very fortunate.
Jessica,
Yeah.
what was it like for you?
I think I didn't have my awakening until about age 28. I felt very much in a box. These are expectations I got from my family, my culture, growing up in a church, the community I was raised. And so it took until about age 28. I found myself working in a factory in the basement. And I remember something welled up inside of me and says, I don't deserve working in a basement with no windows. That's just not me. And so I went outside to have my lunch. And during that time, I was eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I opened up the newspaper. It was such a synchronicity. I opened up the newspaper and the ad said, I am the CEO of my own life. And that just directed me to, you got to write your own rules. You got to live your own life. You can't live what others expect. So that was my big awakening.
Oh, I love that. And what changed for you, Linda? Were you ever having to live someone else's expectations of you?
Probably be quicker for me to share where I wasn't, where I was, where I wasn't living someone else's expectations, because growing up, I was very different from my family, very sensitive, and so that was wrong. I was conditioned to believe from a very early age that everything about me was wrong, that I had no voice, that I was stupid, and that there was, there was really nothing. The best that I could expect was maybe to get married and have children and hopefully find a decent job. That was it. That was the expectation for me. And so, I really learned at an early age to shut myself down and perfected the art of becoming invisible. So I wouldn't be noticed, because being noticed meant getting into trouble for me. I left home when I was 17. I got married when I was 18. And yes, that was very young, but that was my salvation, really, because for the first time I was away from that kind of environment, and I started to encounter people who saw something in me that was different, that people who trusted me, people who told me I was capable of things, people who listened to me. And although I wouldn't really say that was an awakening, that was a beginning of, and it's taken, a long time, each time sort of stripping away the layers of what I was told I am, to find out who I really am. And it wasn't until, probably in my 40s, when I read about the term highly sensitive people. And when I read about that, finally, it was like, it made sense of everything about me and about my life. And finally I realized it wasn't just me. There wasn't something wrong with me. And that really gave me, I think, the knowledge and the desire to really discover, well, who am I? Learn more about myself. And I think that was when I really started to make the change. I mean, I had been doing it before then, but still with this sense of, I'm not good enough. Nobody wants to listen to me. I've got nothing to offer. And it wasn't until I learned, okay, this is who I am, that I really started to break out from that. So yes, most of my life was living up to people's expectations. Not anymore,
Wow.
though.
Yeah.
You're quite
Yeah.
strong though, because you really pushed back. You handled it
Yeah, I
gracefully.
did. And it
I
was
mean,
getting
most
out of that
people,
environment. I had to do that. And I know now that
no,
everybody said you're too young to get married and all of that.
no,
And yes, I
no.
was, but that really empowered me and started me on the journey. So
But I can
yes.
relate to you, because when I saw Doreen Virtue's Oracle decks, and they actually validated my intuition, and everybody kept disagreeing with me,
Mm,
I think it saved me from suicide. I'm being very honest.
mm,
I think I might have killed myself because I wasn't getting support. And
mm,
and I insisted I was intuitive, and they started to believe it later when I started meditating, and I seemed much more calmer and I seemed to know everything. And then they believed it. But without that sort of support from her, and that's why I think losing Doreen Virtue has been huge for me, because she really wrote books, and she wrote very descriptive decks with like things of how to do certain intuitive exercises like I Ching and the pendulum and so forth. And when we lost her because she, got brainwashed by a family member, I thought, wow, I mean, she had really, I don't know if I'd be alive had it not been for her decks and the support. Because I was at a time when I was just moving to California. I had just started to make friends, but it wasn't solidified.
Mm.
So I know what you mean. It can feel very painful.
mm.
Yeah.
Pamela, did you ever live under someone else's expectations?
Have you ever heard the phrase, the last thing to recognize the water is the fish?
This is my first time hearing that one.
There's expectations around us all day, every day. Like go to Costco and don't put your cart back. Like there's expectations everywhere. And I think as women, what we have to determine is I think there's a lot more for us, like be good, all of those good girl things. And then I think there's the how do I really want to live my life? And that takes a tremendous amount of courage because usually we have to step out past something and someone and live into that based on our own values. And that's where these expectations come from, is we want people to live by our values, or they want us to live by theirs. And it causes these really difficult situations that we're in. I learned probably about 10 years ago to make agreements versus expectations and just live by agreements. Like this is a conversation. So expectations come from a place where there's no conversation. So for me, I had to learn how to finally speak up for myself, but I first had to understand who am I and what do I want from life. So it's very, very powerful. But there's expectations all day, every day, especially for women in, how we're to talk, how we're to dress, how we're to do all sorts of things. And it can be very challenging to pull from those. It takes a tremendous amount of desire to be different and do and live the life that I think we're here to live. So that's kind of been my experience with it. I didn't know who I was until I was about 42, probably. I didn't know I liked spicy food. I didn't know I liked eggs. Because it was living somebody else's idea of what life should be. And on this journey, just peeling back that onion all the time around, is this really me? Is this what I really like? What do I want for myself? Sometimes I'm still not sure, right? Like, should I or shouldn't I? And, as soon as you hear that word, it's an expectation from somewhere. It's come from something. So it's a journey for me for sure. But I just decided I don't want to get to the end of my life and have said, wow, I really would have liked to do that. Or I really would have, it's too late. So I think that's what drives me today to keep moving forward. But
Yeah, to not have those regrets. And it does take a lot of courage to live your own life and live life on your terms, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're so exposed to all of these different kinds of expectations and ways of being. For me, I
I have
didn't
a
know.
quick question for you.
Yeah.
Your last name is Regular, but you're anything but regular. Was that a chosen name or was that really your last
It's
name?
not, it was a married name. I'm not with that
Oh,
person anymore,
okay.
but
Okay, because I'm thinking that's so crazy that she's got this regular last name.
a
And
lot of
I'm like,
people play with that word, which is kind of fun, actually.
oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, good. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah, you're right. My life has been anything but regular. And
I was gonna
I
say.
kind of grew up not really knowing what the expectations were actually. My parents were
Mhm.
kind of passive, both of them.
Okay.
And in some ways that was great. And in other ways, I didn't know what to do, what was expected, how to gain their approval, how to
Mhm.
meet the needs of the family, and always strive to figure that out and do everything I could to compensate even for just being born, because I was born so much later in their life. And, they'd pretty much like teenage and grown children by that point. And so I didn't really know what the expectations were. It was just kind of like, I'm just there. And so I always looked for that, what was expected, and kind of played by the rules, the rule book, very by the book kind of person, because I learned really early on that people really didn't think the way I did. And like Linda was talking about, being really highly sensitive and just
Mhm.
witnessing the world in such a different way.
Yeah.
And I was actually only 10 years old when I started making notes of these observations about how society determines our destiny. And then a few
Mm.
decades later, actually self-published a book that that was born of that seed, but it was actually called Embracing Your Power, a healing journal of self-discovery that had the insights and the teachings I learned along the way, and journaling prompts to bring that back to who we are, healing that relationship with ourselves. Like you mentioned about Pamela, about learning what kind of foods you like and flavors and
Yeah.
activities, and just really getting to know ourselves really well and who we are. And so I'm curious, let's start with Linda this time, about what inspired you to actually take back your power.
Mm.
Because you said it was quite a while and you had that salvation, but like you said, it was a salvation. It wasn't really you taking your power just yet at that point at 18. What do you think it was that inspired you to take your power back?
Well, I think I really started to take my power back. I remember a friend saying to me one time, you've got to do something nice for yourself every day. And just even that concept was so foreign to me. I didn't even know, well, what would that be? Make myself a cup of tea or, spend time reading a book or something. I didn't have any concept of what that was. And so I started to think of that. What would be something I could do for myself? And I think really the more I started to think of that, and like Pamela said, what is it that I want? That was a really hard question for me, even if it came down to a group of friends. If I'm in a group of friends and they say, well, where should we go for lunch today? What kind of food are you in the mood for? I never knew. I don't know what everybody else wants. I never, I found it very hard to connect with what I wanted in my life. So I think once I started to take care of myself, I started to talk to myself in more positive and just being kinder to myself. I think that was the point where I really realized how much I gave my power away to other people. I'm a helper type personality anyway. And so it was always about everybody else. I would jump in and help anybody else. And very often I did that at the expense of myself. And so once I started taking that approach of what is it I want? What would feel good to me? How can I treat myself better? How can I be kinder to myself? What can I do for myself today? How can I show love to myself? Because I really didn't love myself. And so it was only when I started doing that, I think, that gradually I started to see all the ways I was giving my power away and started to claim it back, and also to find my voice and be able to not only know what I want, but be able to articulate it and share with the world. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, but I think that was the starting point of taking my power back, I would say.
Wow. Lily, do you remember
Yeah.
the moment that you took your power? Was it when you
Yeah,
told your parents?
I think it was when I was a teenager. For me, it was a bit
Yeah.
younger because my parents were so pushy. I was like, this is my mom was a doctor of three disciplines. My father was an engineer and a writer. And I told them, I said, you know what? I said, you can, and see, unlike the two of you, Jennifer and Linda, I had the opposite where they made it very clear what they expected of me and they showed a lot of love to me. But at the same time, I was like, it's not my idea of good time, And I was like, can we do this differently? Can I do something else? And so luckily they heard me. The best gift I think my parents gave me was that they listened, and they didn't give me clear expectations. So I knew what they expected of me. I think that's half the battle of childhood. If you're not given that, it's a tremendous disadvantage from what I've seen.
Mhm.
But since they did that, and I took it back because I said, no, I was just too stubborn. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'll do this, I'll do that. I negotiated. Everything was a negotiation or an agreement, like you were saying, Pamela. And it became like, okay, so I'll agree to wear, a tunic and jeans, but I'm not going to have to wear the shari just yet. And we'll do that for pujas or ceremony, for like ceremonies or the worships or like a wedding, something big. But they were constantly trying to be like, and I was like, no. And I argued for makeup, I argued for dating, I argued for free speech. I mean, I'm lucky I'm alive. My parents were really fed up with me. They were just like, Lily, shut up. And I'm like, no, I think I should be able to do this, that. But I was very lucky because we come from a very educated family, so it was fine. It was okay for me to put my ideas out there, to be so forceful, to be so independent. What I'm understanding now after seeing people in my culture who do not get that blessing, they kill themselves, they sacrifice themselves, it's just horrible. And it happens in all cultures, but it's just to me, it's a real insult to women because I feel like everyone is a gift, male or female. And so to take that away from somebody, their power is to take everything.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely. Mm.
Well, I can so relate to this. I remember that when I was in high school, You
Yeah,
know,
I know.
all the guidance counselors were like, they were like these weird prophet people that didn't have any business doing that. But they told me, you know, you just be a secretary. You're not smart enough to do anything else. And
Wow.
yeah, just the horrible, and I had to work through that. And my process was when I was 28, was to look at all these decisions I had made and go back and who was the person who told me that? Was it my parents? Was it the guidance counselor? And how did I make a decision based on what they said? And would I make a different decision? Like the guidance counselor. I knew I had the really strong intuition. They didn't know what they were talking about. And so
Good for you.
I go from there. Doesn't matter. They had this title, this, you know, they just
I
didn't
was
know.
really lucky. My guidance counselor was super nice. See, I can see how lucky I am because my teachers expected more from me. My guidance counselor expected more. None of this, you guys were really underserved, in my opinion, because you're so bright. And for people to tell you that you should be just this and not this, to me is insane. Yeah, I'm so sorry you guys had to go through that.
And yet here we are, right?
I know, but I'm just saying it's not right. To me, it's not right. Nobody should be putting someone down. They should be lifting them up and encouraging them. And it just
Absolutely.
boggles me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a quote once where, you know, the only time you ever look down on someone is when you're giving them a hand to lift them up,
Oh,
you
nice.
know?
That's very
Yeah.
yeah.
Pamela, what inspired you to take back your power?
Well, I didn't know that was a concept. Like, I didn't know that was a possibility. Like, what do you mean? So I didn't know that I had no idea until the day I decided I wanted to try running my own business. And then I realized the mindset problem I had when you get into the client game and you want to work with clients and you don't think you have any power, it gets messy real fast. So for me, it forced me to take a look at all of the thoughts and feelings and things that I had around power and worthlessness, like worthiness and all of those things. But I really had no concept of it, didn't understand it. Of course, coming from I struggled a lot in where I came from and was sexually abused as a child. And it kind of starts from there, right? Like it makes sense looking at it that that's what's happened. And that's why I don't, know very much or understand very much or didn't understand that I had power. And when I started a business, I really struggled because I didn't know how to do anything. If you can't speak up, if you can't, like when I say you, I mean me, like when I can't speak up, when I can't ask for this, or if I can't have a conversation, or all the things that happen in business that we need to be so strong at, it was the perfect playing ground for me, the learning ground for me. And that wasn't until I was almost 45 where I really started to pick that up, where I would play games with my husband around, okay, I don't know how to say no, like became evident. And I said, would you mind if I would one day just, you ask me a question and I say no? And then I'll come back later with my real answer because I honestly don't know the answer. Right. Like I couldn't even articulate what I wanted or anything. And then I learned a lot of ways to say no. And I remember that pivotal moment, like that's where it really started for me was, okay, what do I really want? And oh, I have a right to that. And I had some fabulous women around me that said, well, yeah, of course you do. Or I would look at her and go, what would she think in this situation? Or what would she do in this situation? I'm like, well, she wouldn't accept that. So I'm like, oh, why do I think that's okay for me? And I did. So I had such a blurred line that I didn't even know what was right and wrong and good. And like, I didn't have it. So it's quite an opportunity for me. And the business came as a result of I couldn't work for anyone anymore. And I wanted the financial independence of it. I could see that I could make money, right? It was happening for other people, but that was the ground for me to start.
Wow, that's amazing. I love all of
Nice.
these stories and experiences.
Yeah.
Just in
Yeah.
awe of the path that
Mm,
each one of
Can
us
I
has
can I
taken.
share something similar to what Pamela was saying?
Certainly.
So I had that ability to negotiate, as you can tell, because I have my big mouth with my parents, right? But my uncle would teach me how to be assertive and ask for help from the hotels. Oh, ask them for extra towels, and they call them up. They would have me do these things, right? One of the things that really stood in my mind was the first time I had to say no to a client who was really intelligent. I was a little intimidated. He was older, he was an FBI agent, and I was treating his son, right? And then he proceeded to tell me how to do therapy. And that's when I just thought, nope, I'm the doctor, not you, out. And I just basically said to him, no, I said, since you think you know so much, go find someone else who will agree with your views. I said, because that's not how we're doing therapy. You're not the doctor. I'm sorry. And his jaw just dropped because he was a white guy who's like 6 foot tall, right? Some good looking man. And he just never thought somebody would say no to him. And I was like, that's okay. You can find somebody else. You don't need me. And then he thought it was a real loss because then he tried to argue to stay. And I said, no, it's clear you don't respect my ideas, my value. You need to find someone else who you do respect. So do you see what I'm saying? Like we all have those moments and it sort of shifts and you suddenly realize how much power you do have. Yeah.
Yeah, and then being able to dedicate and devote your life to what you're most about and what you believe in, what you
Right.
stand
And
for,
I,
and living those values and protecting
right.
them like you are,
Yeah.
Lily. That's amazing.
Yeah. But sometimes you have to be that forceful and get in
Yeah.
people's face. And then they finally realize you know what you're talking about. And I'm like, we'll do it this way or we don't do it at all. And he was
Mm.
like, okay, you know. So
That's
I think we
so
have those
great.
moments. It's just that some of us are ready to fight a little bit earlier. So you can watch it and laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, and recognizing when it's like a fight or flight response and when it's actually standing your ground,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think that's really important distinction as well. For me, what comes to mind is when I had left my marriage, recognizing that it wasn't a good place for me to be at all. I came to a place where I didn't even really recognize myself at all. I wasn't feeling like myself. I wasn't acting like myself in any way. I became very dispirited in that relationship. It was quite dysfunctional, abusive, and so on. And I spent a weekend after I left at a Wise Woman weekend retreat and got to learn about all these different energy modalities and was just held and heard in a different way that I hadn't been up until that point. But what was really pivotal for me in taking back my power was when I was walking in a Take Back the Night event that happens every year in Ontario. I'm not sure if it's happening in other places as well. And Take Back the Night was like a march for women, and men would stand on the sidelines as well to take back the night, you know, to speak up for domestic violence. And I remember walking in the crowds, which I'm not one for crowds. I'm very empathic and it's very, very overwhelming for me. But I stepped into it and I walked along and it was very intense. Like everyone's like yelling and, you know, have such strong voices and really taking back their power altogether. And once in a while, I could say it too. And a lot of times I couldn't. It was just so intense, the feeling coming out and then just crying. But then just being able to be with that intensity was the stepping stone in taking back my power, right? Being with that, not running away or hiding or isolating, withdrawing from it all or distracting myself to not feel anything. And then to eventually say it and then release that and then to actually take back my power, take back the night. It was amazing and perfect timing and happened exactly on my anniversary. So I literally took back the night, the day that I got married, which, you know, I can't make this stuff up. It was pretty awesome. And so now, ladies, what does it actually mean to be living life on our terms? What kind of understanding have you come to about what that actually means? How do we do that? How do we start living life on our terms? What does that even mean? Pamela, do you want to start us off on that?
That's a great question. I'm giving that a little bit more of a think. The word that comes up for me is understanding what I value and then running through my values, all the decisions I need to make, or the things that come into my circle, or the things that are happening, the decisions I need to make for myself and my family and my business. I run them through my values. And for me, it's still a voice every once in a while that's like, oh, that's a little strong, right? That's a little firm. That's it. Whoa. And but it doesn't work when I walk out on myself. Like I've learned that. So I need to really, like, it's freedom, it's independence, it's fun. Those are the things out front. So if I am living on life on my terms, I'm running things through that and I'm living through that. So it's like right now I've got a voice where I'd like to curse a little. I'm like, this is probably not the environment, right? Like, but that's kind of who I am. Like, let's do it, right? And that doesn't mean I have to run over everybody else's values or, right? So there's that balance, but it's really about me really understanding who I am and giving myself permission to want what I want.
Mm. Yes. Yes. Love that. Linda, what does it mean to be living life on your terms now?
Well, I think, what Pamela said, you have to know yourself. You have to know what's most important to you and really stay connected with that. Because once you know what's most important to you, then it's so easy to say no. It's much easier to say no to anything that doesn't align with that. And it's knowing everything about yourself. I mean, we talked at the beginning about expectations. And I have found for myself that I had such high and unrealistic expectations for myself in many areas. I could be so compassionate and open and patient with other people, and I wasn't with myself. I can remember, just as an example, I play tennis and I tore a calf muscle, which is a common injury for tennis players. And I went to the doctor, taped it up and everything. And, everybody said to me, everybody who'd had the injury before said, oh, take about at least 6 weeks to recover. And, I heard that and I listened to it, and I was just aware in the back of my mind, there was this voice that said, yeah, but you're going to be back sooner than that. It's like, you have to be back sooner than that. And then the doctor said to me, well, after a couple of days, it's going to be helpful for you to start walking, just to keep it moving. And so I thought, okay, great. After 2 days, I'll go on the treadmill. So I went on the treadmill. Now, and I look back on this now and I think this is so ridiculous. And if anybody else did this, I would tell them it was ridiculous, but it didn't even occur to me. So I got on the treadmill. What do you think I did? 2 minutes, 5 minutes? No, I did 50 minutes. 50 minutes walking on the treadmill. And after that, it's like, oh, my leg's really sore now. Really? But that was my expectation. It was so deeply ingrained. It's like, no, you're going to be back in less than 6 weeks. Get on that treadmill and, start working it. It's so ridiculous. But I had so many expectations like that for myself that I have discovered along the way. And of course, once I know about it, then I can let it go. But it's really being willing, I think, to know yourself at those deepest levels and to recognize when your expectations for yourself are so unrealistic. Because I don't think you can live life, you're not living life on your terms if you have those crazy expectations. Because I know now that those expectations came from me always trying to prove myself, right? And always trying to to get approval, because I've got to be better than everyone else, or, I've got to go above and beyond to get even a scrap of approval. So I know where those came from, but they're so deeply ingrained that we're not even aware of them very often. 50 minutes on a treadmill 2 days after you've torn the calf muscle is completely ridiculous. But, I didn't see it as ridiculous at the time. It was just, that's what I had to do. So I think it comes down to that awareness, knowing what's important to you, understanding yourself and understanding where you do give your power away, where you are harsh with yourself. And again, learning to be kinder with yourself, because then I think, and only then can you start to live life on your terms, because otherwise you don't know what your terms are, really.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Very good point. Jessica, do you feel you're living life on your terms now?
I do, but there was a time, and I was probably in my 20s, when I had this litany of why don't people understand me? Why don't
Mm.
they accept me? And then it happened about that 28th year of you got to accept yourself and you need to understand yourself. Really? Do I have to do that first? Yeah, you do have to do that first. And so that really helped me along to, okay, so I need to do some inner work to get this, develop more self-acceptance. And of course, self-love is the deepest part of this. And then also living life on my own terms, I think of freedom. And along with freedom is always responsibility. So whatever I choose to do, have my own business, I take the responsibility of doing this, of saying of doing what I say I will do, of paying my taxes, of being responsible. And that has been a key point of living on your own terms. So when I've always lived by synchronicity. I started out in the apparel industry. I was a designer and a pattern maker, and then I went into high tech. These are all like certain amount of year increments. And then I went into academic work and film work, and now I'm writing. So all these had synchronistic experiences that just led me to the next path. I knew I was never going to be that 9 to 5, work for the same company for 30 years. And, that was part of the expectation pool when I was young, but I knew that that's not going to work for me. So I need to create my life that I can be happy about and feel that spirit also has a role in this.
I love that you mentioned freedom and spirit because my motto is to free your spirit to direct the life that you are meant to live. And I just think that really is the motto because instead of becoming conditioned and living out those expectations and becoming dispirited, that we reignite that spark, that we actually free our spirit, allow that space for our core essence, our spirit, the truth of who we really are to guide us, to show us the way, to show what gives meaning, helps us feel on purpose, and to lay out our life and forge a path that's meant for us, and not do the 9 to 5 thing if we don't want to, or, you know, meet cultural expectations and so on, that we aren't like against it. We just want to be able to live our life fully in the way that we feel that we're meant to, where our needs are met, where we're seen, heard, and held, where we feel understood, and not care if we don't, right? Either. So to trust our own intuitive knowing of how we're meant to be living and to be soul led, to be guided by spirit. And I know, Lily, you've been talking a lot about how you held your spirit. Your spirit has been intact through a lot of the time, but there was also a time when you felt suicidal as well, and so
So
how did
my
that turn
father,
around for you? Can you share a little bit more
yeah,
about
sure.
that?
So I was going to
Yeah.
explain where that came from. So my father, when I was 13, he was diagnosed with ALS, and then he died when I was 17 in high school. That for me was one of the toughest times when I
Mm.
really considered suicide. And my mother found me and she said, "No, you need help, you need counseling, and then you hopefully won't feel this way." And she was right. I was very lucky. I had a very nice counselor from high school who really he seemed to listen. That's all I wanted. And it just really helped me kind of like realize like there's more to life, just give it a chance. And so that kind of saved me in that sense. But there was one part that living life on your terms. So one of the things that Linda was saying about you have to love yourself enough, you have to come in. One of the things when I went to a therapist, because I was taking care of my mother then at this point, and I'd taken her care of her for 24 years. The last 3 years she had dementia, and then she died. Now it was tremendously draining. The way I survived it was I went to a really good therapist, and one of the things she told me was, Lily, you're so compassionate with everybody else, just like Linda was. And she said, what about yourself? And I said, good point. So I tried to start to show myself, like be easier with myself and let the regret go, let the beating up of yourself go. So when I did that, I had so much compassion for myself. Suddenly it became really easy to forgive everybody. And forgiveness is such a big thing that we try to drill into people, but it's so hard to get to that point. Well, as soon as you love yourself and you have compassion for even like your shortcomings, it's so easy to forgive everyone else. And then my life became really easy. It became almost like, when you hit that like thing, I don't know if any of you guys, it sounds like you guys have hit it, where you hit it and suddenly it just goes, like you're just in the zone. I kind of felt like I hit the zone. Like it was easy to surrender. It was easy. It was taking forever to get married. I didn't care. I was like, I always had a really good partner next to me. So we just didn't know how long it was going to go. And I was like, all right, I'm surrendering. God wants me to learn a lesson. I'm learning it. But instead of getting bitter and mad about it, I began to be like, oh, okay, it's okay. Because I know I'll always, and then my concept of love changed. My concept was romantic love is like a river that surrounds all of us. And then when you happen to have an idea of someone and they happen to be there, they'll spring out and they'll come to you. And once I used it with my clients, they loved it and it seemed to fit. So yeah, to answer your question in a very roundabout way, I'm sorry about that. It was a combination of all those factors that really sort of saved me from it. And then I had a spiritual thing. I had like this belief, like, I don't want to kill myself because if I do, I really don't want to have to relive this life if that's really the case. Come on. Like, I've come so far. We're almost there. Let's stop this, Lily. So I really had a lot of discussions with my mother. I mean, it was very tough. My mother at one point, she had chronic pain. So she asked me to, and she didn't mean to put me in a difficult position, but she did. She said, she was crying and she said, I really want you to kill me. I said, Mom, I'll kill you. I said, that's okay with me because God will understand I'm doing it for that, but they'll put me in jail. They won't care. You know what I mean? That'll be the end of my life. So I tried to argue with her. I was like, Mom, really? Can we try to find? So then we would try to find like pain management things for her. And then we did. And even then it was hard because my sister, who's a nurse practitioner, even if my mother took slightly more meds than somebody, she made it sound like she was a drug addict. And I said, Gertie, that's not helping. I said, honestly, I said, you're not there when she's crying her brains out and really is thinking of hurting herself because she's mad that she's in this position of feeling weak and needing a medicine. And you're making her feel bad. And I said, Gertie, really? So I really went through a lot. I had to negotiate things with my sister. I had to realize my sister never seemed to understand that at a certain point in our life, we're going to have to face God and be okay with the decisions you've made and be okay with living life on your terms, right? Never occurred to my sister. Always occurred to me. That was like the guiding principle. Like, can I live with this if I don't do this? Can I live with it? Like, I saw a homeless man today. I bought myself a donut and I thought, you know what? He's getting breakfast. So I asked him, I said, what do you want? I said, here's a chocolate donut. What drink do you want? And he said, coffee. I said, what do you want in it? Like he was like shocked because no one ever asked him anything. And I thought, you're a human being. And when I face God, I'll be able to say, you know what? I bought the man breakfast. Give me a break. So that's when I die, I'm going to be like, look at the videotape. Did you see the videotape, God? They'll be like, what? Really? Shut up. But so that's how to take back my life and live it on my terms. Like, can I live with myself? If I can, then I'm living it the right way. If I'm not, then something's really wrong and it has to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a big part of living life on our terms is that unconditional love,
Yeah.
tending to our own needs, having that
Yeah.
self-compassion, forgiveness,
Mhm.
all these super important qualities, and the determination, the perseverance, the sheer drive, to live this life fully and not have to come back and do it all over again.
Right. I was like, no. That's enough of that. We had
I'm not going through high school again, forget it.
Yeah.
If I could go back to high school.
No, I know. I was like, good Lord.
Yeah.
Not to high school. High
So
school's a
now that we've got
nightmare.
to this place, where we're living life on our terms most of the time,
Right.
how do we stay aligned with our dreams and our goals and continue to meet our own needs? How do we sustain this way of life on our terms? Pamela, some thoughts?
I think the most important piece of it is having the dream and the goal so close to me all the time, because I can start in the morning and by the end of the day, like sometimes by noon, I'm off track, right? Like I get asked a lot. I get there's a lot of volume coming at me, a lot of people coming, and it's not hard to want to help or whatever comes up for me, right? People please install, like, she sits on a shelf over there and, shows up every once in a while. And it's imperative to remember that and run the decisions through those goals and dreams. And some days I'm good at it and some days I'm not. But every morning getting up, and I've got this great big thing on my desktop that I look at, and it's like, this is where we're running things through. This is where we've determined for this year, and this is what we're going to do. And that's it. That's my secret.
I love it. I love that secret. That's not so secret anymore. And I had a similar revelation too, that if you keep what's true in front of you, then you don't get lost that way. And balance comes from living your truth. So to stay aligned, centered, and balanced, we got to continue living our truth. Lily, would you agree? What helps you
Yeah, so
stay
I
aligned with your
so
dreams?
along those lines, that's true. My mother was my role model for lots of reasons. She achieved a lot academically, but she very much believed in God and would pray to God. No one told her to. She did it because she really had a need. And that impressed me. I thought it comes from a past life, because she would get up at 5, get flowers from her, the top floor of her house, give it to God, and then start her day. And I thought, wow. So she did that. She then meditated twice a day, and so did my dad, right? So seeing that example, I thought, you know what? By age 30, I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow their path. I'm going to meditate twice a day, because I was already praying twice a day. That started at 7. But I think it gave her strength when my dad suffered with ALS. She didn't waver. She managed to take care of him, raise us, do what she worked full time. I mean, that's incredibly hard. And then she managed to keep that. And my uncle even said to her, he said, "You still worship God after he took your husband the way he did?" And my mother looked at him and she said, "If I don't have God, I don't have anything." And I was like, wow. So somehow in there this faith grew that just changed my life forever. Because when I took care of my mother for so long, the optometrist said to me, he said, why do you do it? Because it's been forever. You've been taking care of her. And I said, you don't get it. I said, when she dies, when I really need something, watch how fast God goes right through that door and gives me exactly what I need. Because I tried to take care of somebody, and she took care of so many people in her life, her friends, her family. She always did for everybody. So I think the way you stay aligned is by the holding to your values, what Pamela said. But then it's also, if you manage to find a couple things that give you balance and strength. I started exercising when I was 21. Why? Because my father died of ALS, and I was determined to drop dead at 70. Just drop dead. No illnesses. That's it. So there were certain things that really they could hurt you, but I thought, no, I'm going to be stronger than that. And I think I think it's determination. That's the best way to put it. Determination sometimes makes you stick to your dream and your vision, and then it sort of propels you forward. And oh, one more thing. You know that cartoon? There's a Disney cartoon. I don't know if you guys know this, because you probably don't watch cartoons. I do, because I like cartoons. So there's a cartoon called Kim Possible, and her partner's name is Ron Stoppable. And she's got all these villains, right? And some of the villains are her dad's best friends, because they were all science geeks. Whenever I think of, can I do something, I always remind myself, if Kim can do it, I can do it. Kim Possible can do that, so I can do it. So it's kind of like a little pick me up that just sort of cracks me up, because the scenarios that they find themselves in is so ridiculous. But just to tell yourself it's possible,
Yeah.
you can do it, I think is very empowering.
Yeah. Knowing what's possible and deciding to continue to do it,
Right.
to have that drive. Jessica, how do you stay aligned with your vision?
So I do put a list on the wall, and it's my mission statement and a vision statement. I also do the 3 pages, the artist way, 3 pages, so I can take stuff out of my head that doesn't need to be there. And then I also count on being in groups of people who are alive, have their lights and bright and artistic, and being in this panel also because I get to speak my truth. to a group of people. So it's a reminder of what's important. And then, of course, meditating twice a day is also really important.
I love that. I love that you are so intentional about what you surround yourself with, those reminders, those mission statements, and the people that you spend time with, that you surround yourself with, the environment and the conditions that support the kind of life that allows you to live it on your terms. And in connection with our higher power, with that spirit, with God, with of our understandings, right? To be in deep alignment with that and be willing to be led, but also to make choices, conscious choices. Linda, how do you stay aligned with your vision and your mission?
I would say a couple of things. One is, my dream vision, I guess you could say, is really to be the highest and best version of myself that I can be, and whatever that means. And so I ask myself that every day. What is the highest and best use of my energy today? And so I start my day out that way. I also believe we all have this amazing tool at our disposal all the time. It's our emotional guidance system. And it tells us immediately when something's off. And it's really as simple as staying tuned into how you feel. So if you feel like something's off, if you feel like something's a struggle, and this is something that I had to learn how to do, because I used to, if something was a struggle, I just powered through it, right? You just get it done. But now I recognize that if something starts to feel like a struggle, something starts to feel slightly difficult, something starts to feel not so good in my body, I stop and I check in with myself and just really discover what that is, what it means, and just be willing to pay attention to that, because sometimes we can be so focused on, this is my dream, this is my vision, and I'm making this happen, that we sometimes maybe want to be guided in a slightly different direction, or you just make a slight adjustment. But because we're so focused on, this is my dream, this is my vision, sometimes we miss that. So being really tuned into your energy, your emotions, I think is really, really helpful. The other thing that's really helped me, I mean, we all know about a gratitude journal, and I practice gratitude every day. But what I started to do is keep a joy journal. And at the end of every day, I write in there what sparked joy in me today, what brought me joy today. And it's really interesting. There's most often the littlest things, the simplest things, and I think being connected to that joy just brings about that energy that keeps you in alignment. And again, it's interesting for me because I used to get frustrated years ago whenever anyone would talk about joy. Just find your joy, connect with joy. And I used to think, what does that even mean? Joy felt such like a foreign thing to me. I did not know how to connect with that. Now I do, and it's something that's really important to me to feel that joy. And by writing down every day what brought me joy today, maybe it's just one thing, sometimes it's several things, that helps me stay, I think, energetically aligned to that highest and best version of myself. And that makes sure that I'm in alignment and allows me to go in whatever direction I need to go, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I can tell you that it works, because I
Yes.
did something very similar when I was a live-in caregiver for a period and recovering from the burnout and compassion fatigue and feeling very uninspired, not having a vision of my future life because I just couldn't think at that point. And I started a journal, writing down my daily delights, is what I called it. And noticing those inspirations, reawakening that wonder, that joy, and then becoming inspired again. And I love that you talked about emotions and energy too, Linda, because then it really speaks to becoming the best versions of ourselves so we can give the best of ourselves rather than what's left of ourselves. Right?
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes. Thank you so much, ladies. This has been absolutely incredible. And I know that SacredU.Love, the co-founder Sophia Soul, has a tremendous vision for touching lives everywhere and has been for a couple of years now really establishing this community of heart-centered people, literally from all around the world, and is the ones that is hosting this event tonight. These panel discussions, Inspire, Ignite, and Innovate. These conversations that count is just one of the many programs being offered. And I'm wondering if Sophia is around right now to tell us a little bit more about Sacred You. Are you here, Sophia? Yay!
Yes, Sophia is here. Thank you ever so much for a wonderful panel discussion. Oh my God, I've been sitting here listening, and it's really amazing how the power that we have when we do take our life back,
Yeah.
that we can step into our power. So I'd just like to, first of all, thank you, Jennifer, for facilitating a wonderful panel, and for Jessica and Linda and Lily and Pamela. Thank you also for joining us. We have had a few people watching us. No questions or no comments, which is unfortunate, but we have had people watching us. So Sacred You, we are honored to be able to present, to promote, to host all these wonderful panel discussions, and we've got ones coming up, usually 1 or 2 a week. This is actually the last one for a little bit of a break. We don't have any more for another couple of weeks, but do click on the links in the comments to see when the next ones are. They've all been provided in the comments, which is great. And I'd just like to thank our wonderful VA, Maymuna, who has been posting all your links in all the comments. So for everyone who's watching the live or the replay, do click on these links and connect with these beautiful women who have just given out an hour of their time to talk about life on their terms and our own terms, to help us to get our life back. And coming up in not 2 weeks, I thought it was 2 weeks, in 4 days' time, we've got the geometry of your chakras that is coming up. And for everyone else who wants to know about Sacred You, again, click on the links and check out our website, sacredu.love. Come and join us. Come and join us, have some fun in the panel discussions. We've got about 20 tribes that you can try out just for $1, $1 for 2 weeks. And then after that, it's just $10 a month. Come and join us. Thank you ever so much for chatting with us again. And for everyone out there watching us, come and join us again in 4 days' time for the geometry of your chakras. How can you tap into their power? Then after that, we've got a break, but that's coming up. And have a beautiful day wherever you are.
Thank you so much.